really good reminder of like you go up to the people that look like you and you're comfortable with and you're friendly with and you may know, and we don't always live it out. And I think on the practitioner standpoint, we need to build a process for outreach that forces us to get into the communities, go to historically Black colleges and universities, and really put ourselves out there and make this outreach and make sure that students know that they feel welcome. So I went up to those two students, and the conversation we had made me so sad because what came out is that they didn't feel welcome. In that breakfast, they said, we don't know if we belong. We're the only two Black guys in here. And here I am telling them, like, you guys don't understand. We sit in boardrooms and we talk about recruiting you and how valued you are and how we need you in our walls. And that message was not getting through to them. They felt like they didn't belong and they were about to jump ship. So how do we bridge that gap as professionals to actually tell these students that, no, we need you and we want you?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I want to jump. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so do I, actually, because and I think it came out this morning, too, with the young man who was asking about, we talk as professionals, as seasoned professionals about this issue, and we were just talking about this, too. Are we talking about diversity inclusion among students, among all the students, and not just to the students who we're trying to recruit, but to all students as part of their professional training? This is a problem in our industry that you need to be aware of as a professional, sheerly pragmatically. And if they're coming out of these universities not even understanding that this is an issue in this industry, then we have a problem. So they're talking about it at PRSA, so why aren't they having sessions at PRSSA saying D&I is a major problem, and what are you going to do to change that? So that's plays to what I was doing.
So I was at PRSSA too, and I was with about 5 students. And we all noticed a group of students huddling but not mingling or talking. And my students were all Latinos that year. And they said, oh, we think they're Latinos. So they went over there and started using their language. Immediately, they just, I saw them blossom and get engaged. And my students took care of them for the entire week, translating, because they really could not speak English very well. And that sort of evolved to blogging and communicating virtually. They're friends now. And then one of ours was a liaison down to Peru for their first conference, Lori Vasquez. And that's what it takes. They had to take the first step, though, because they just did not know how to break that overwhelming number of people that they didn't know. So, yes, I agree. We have to facilitate that more than we are.
Great. Thank you so much. And it seems like our group 2 is coming in. Kenon, did you want to wrap up, or you want to? You have any?
I figure we're just gonna share our thoughts from the breakout session. I'm gonna have a couple people talk once they start kind of flowing in.
Okay.
Just have them. Yeah.
Okay. So we covered practitioners. Be intentional. Somebody had their hand up. I was gonna go to student, but that's where we're going. That's yes. So perfect.
Okay, so since I can never get this. You're amazing, Eric. Okay, I'm gonna literally stay like this. So my sentence I'm gonna share, but it goes along with my story, and it actually happened last night. So today I'm the famous girl for teaching everyone the word Ubuntu, which is the South African phrase for "I am because you are," right? And that's the whole idea behind mentorship. Is leading the way so someone else can do the same, right? So I look to my left, and right before I go on stage, I look to my dean and I say, Dean, I'm gonna teach an African word tonight, but I'm really kind of scared that I might be too cultured right now. She was like, what? And she literally looks at me like, how dare you say that you're gonna be too cultured? And I'm like, but this is my idea thinking. Again, I just graduated 6 months ago. I'm kind of new to the industry. So I'm like, let me go in with ease. And she's like, no, say it over and over until they get it. I was like, cool. So it goes with the student words, which were communicate, uncomfortable, and belong. Perfect for this story. So my sentence that I came up with was, if you communicate and convince yourself of your values first, then you reduce the risk of being uncomfortable in companies down the road. And I think that just my experience today, just completely being myself in whatever room I go into, I'm making it easier for my journey. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having to assimilate to something that I know nothing about, coming in as you are so that you don't have to be uncomfortable later.
Worse. Thank you so much. Any on the educator label? Well, I guess I'll have to take that since I'm an educator, right? All right, so quickly, as far as education or educators are concerned, from my perspective, I have taught at a Hispanic serving institution, minority serving institution my entire career. And definitely being intentional about two things. What some of the panel speakers said today about getting your mind right is something that I think is very important. Making sure that people understand, students understand that they are who they are, whether it's at home or at the workplace. I definitely think it's important that we teach them that, we continue to perpetuate that idea, and that they continue to be that person that's going to wake up in the morning and realize they are who they are, and let's go to work and let's get things done.
Okay, so as my group kind of files in, I'm just going to kind of share some of the thoughts that we came up with in our breakout session. So what we decided to do initially is, before we started brainstorming, just really kind of come up with a definition for what diversity and inclusion really means. Because I always like to define the topic before you start coming up with ideas for it. So where we really landed was with diversity. Diversity is really more about having a variety, having a set of different backgrounds, different cultures, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's region, whether it's sexual orientation, disability, whatever. Just having a diverse set of people at the table, having different perspectives at the table. But inclusion is really taking it this step further and making sure that their voice matters, and also making sure that they have the power to speak up. So really being able to share those perspectives and really being able to share those different ideas, that's really where inclusion comes into place. And one of the things we discussed is you can have diversity without inclusion, but you can't really have inclusion without diversity. You can have different perspectives at the table, but if they don't feel empowered enough to speak up, then you have diversity without inclusion. So we decided to really kind of define this, and then we came up with action items for students, for practitioners, and for educators. And they really all just kind of centered around 3 themes. So I wanted to share those, and I actually wanted to give one person from each group an opportunity to just kind of share their thoughts with it. So the first theme for our action items was really this idea of proactivity, and just really approaching diversity and inclusion from a more proactive approach rather than a more reactive approach. So rather than waiting for those opportunities for diversity and inclusion to kind of fall in our laps, really going out and hitting them head on and trying to produce that diversity and inclusion from the start. The second thing was really from learning from each other, whether it's research on best practices in diversity and inclusion, just talking to each other and learning each other's perspectives. It just really kind of revolved around a theme of just learning from each other, learning about our successes with diversity and inclusion, learning from our failures with diversity and inclusion, and just really kind of building better action items and better action plans through that process of learning from each other. And then the third theme that everything kind of centered around was this idea of making diversity and inclusion more natural. And the way you do that is really through education, educating people about different cultures, different backgrounds, and just really making it to the point where it's not a forced issue at that point. I mean, it's just, diversity and inclusion is natural to a group, it's natural to an organization, it's natural to a university, and just sharing those perspectives and just really teaching people about the importance of diversity and inclusion to make it more natural as you progress. Okay, so I want to start with the practitioners. And I'm looking. I don't see. Oh, there we go. All right. So kind of share your thoughts about what.
Well, hello, everyone, again. Let me go ahead and stand up. So we as practitioners have the amazing task of taking this job and making it work, right, in our agencies. It just is. I have no words for that. But anyway, so one of the ideas that we have, not ideas, but the things that we discuss is that diversity and inclusion has to be intentional, top of mind. You have to be really intentional about recruitment and inclusion and opportunities and promotions, because our industry is so many years behind that if we don't do it like this, it's never going to happen. We also talked about awareness. How do we have the difficult conversations, the things that are happening outside our doors that impact the way that our employees show up to work every day, and not just classify it as taboo? If we don't talk about the things that are happening, we're never going to be able to solve it. And then we talked about just being purposeful, right? Intentional, and create awareness. Letting people know what's in your mind, what's happening, and how can they help. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put Dr. Horsley on the spot. Can you share the perspectives from the educators?
Sure. So we did talk about the fact that all of us who were in the group, raise your hand, Nellie and Ken and everybody, we all come from very different campuses. And so the first thing we noticed was that our student populations are all very different. So that was one of the first things we thought about, was how can we're going to have to do this on a case-by-case basis, but maybe we're going to have to reach out to similar institutions who have had some success so that we can learn from them and be able to implement it back where we are. We also talked about being able to start earlier, high school, reach out earlier. Nobody goes to high school and says, I want to be a PR practitioner when I grow up, and being able to inform them about what this major and field can do for them. Anybody else want to add something? Ken, did you want to add anything? Anybody? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm going to put one of my students on the spot. So Gloris is going to speak for...
I knew it. Well, as students, our conclusions were to learn more about different experiences. Like, don't be afraid to be out your comfort zone. I mean, I'm a Latina, but that doesn't mean that I can't hang out with different groups, like different religious groups, it's like racist groups. So, also, don't be afraid to educate yourself and educate other people about yourselves, your background. Challenge yourself to be part of different groups, what I just mentioned. Also, we talk about like healthy competition, like we can compete with each other, but also we are a group, so we have to help each other to success all together. Like Gabby mentioned, your success is my success, so like try to have that thinking. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, and yeah, that's all I got. So thank you.
We're at the end. And on time, too. The time doesn't really matter when you're doing great work. A few things that I wanted to mention to you today. One of my favorite lines this morning was, we need more PR for PR in this area, and I think our group talked about awareness and the importance of listening and also creating awareness. But we need to build more public relations for diversity and inclusion in what we're doing, whether we're on the academic front or on the corporate front or on the agency front. One of the things the Planck Center determined a few years ago when we formed our work in diversity and inclusion is that there are some great groups out working in this area already. Judith Harrison, as you heard mentioned today on the PRSA Foundation, along with Ron Culp, who's a member over there, has been working actively for a good period of time on D&I issues. The Arthur Page Society has been working actively on diversity and inclusion. The Institute for Public Relations has its own outreach in this area. And so as a board, we determined our goal would not be to create a new program, but rather for the Planck Center in mentoring and leadership to be a catalyst with others. I think that's an important thing for us to do. Ken, you were a part of that conversation along with our other advisors when we talked about that. It wasn't adding more bulk to what was already there. It was adding actually more value as we did this work. So that's been an important part of our work. I love Don Thompson's comments about his confidence level, but also his thinking about who he is when he said, my first barrier was my own mindset, right? I think that's such a key issue for us, for all of us, and you've shown today that you can, as we think in groups, overcome the mindset that we may have about who we are. We have to do more in this area, and I think the word intentionality is such an important part of that as we think about our work. bring all of you to this business. How many days do we go into our work, our class, or wherever we may go, and we don't bring all of us to what we're doing in terms of our transparency or conversations with others about who we are and what we expect. That's a very important part of it, and I think that's been one of the great things about today. And then finally, bring the best of who you are. Understand the culture, and also understand the essence of who you are, meaning know yourself. Get a greater self-insight on who you are, and ask for others to help you do that. I've been so impressed with the students and the young professionals and the way you approach this. We can all learn from you on this. So I hope you've enjoyed this morning. Have you enjoyed it? Has it been a good part of it? I want to thank a few people. First of all, our host. DePaul is a wonderful host for the work we do, and year in, year out, whether it is the work that we do in advance of the Milestones and Mentoring Dinner or events like this. The team at DePaul and Ron in particular have been such wonderful hosts. Let's give him a big round of applause. I also want to thank the members of our board who are here, who have spent time today, as well as in our planning, to be a part of this. We have a wonderful board that is very dedicated to doing the things that are important, and really around two key concepts that I want you to keep in mind: mentoring and leadership. Okay? And you noticed last night at the dinner is never about programming. The dinner is never about tactics and delivering PR programs. The dinner is about people, the people behind those programs, and what they do to motivate, inspire, and lead other people. Such an important part of our work. So as we think about that in the future, obviously we want to do more in this area. We'll look to you to help us do more in this area. I do need, and I want to make this point for Carla and Jessica, we do need your feedback today. So if you filled out those forms, please send them forward. If you haven't, spend just a minute or two completing those forms, because that will help us plan for the future. And based on what you tell us, we will do more in this area. And let me also just thank a couple of other groups. You've met some of them today, our D&I advisory group. Very important to our work. You saw them on the panel and participating here with us. And in particular, most importantly, let me thank Dr. Nilanjana Barden as well as Pat Ford for the work they have done in organizing and putting together this outstanding event. Please give them a big hand.